Flosstube, Stephanie here, Ms. Oh So Crafty. How is everybody doing? Welcome to my 16th Flosstube video. Today is Saturday, September 3rd, about 4:30 p.m. And it's been a couple weeks since my last video, since I wrapped up my last vlog. And I think what I'm going to do today is sort of wrap up the whole month of August, including the past couple weeks, which you haven't seen, plus the Stitchy Olympics stuff. So there's a lot to share today. I've got whips galore, I've got an FO, I've got some tag that I filmed, the Stitchy Spot tag, and also some Q&A that I did while I was stitching. So a few of you have asked to see me stitching, so you'll get to see that while I answer those Q&A questions. And my husband has agreed to appear and be interviewed on Stitchy terms, so that should be fun. And I'm going to share my memorabilia. I have some haul. Let's get started. Excuse me. So, the Stitchy Olympics started with the blue day. Blue for the Olympic rings. And for that, I chose to work on my 12 Days of Christmas project. I worked on it another day as well for the musical anthem day. So we got 2 days of effort in August. And let's see, here we are. As you can see, it's getting close to the finish line. What I did in this month is I worked on this block, the Lord of Leaping, and the block next to him, the Piper Piping, and the border beneath, and that little medallion in the corner. That was part of the blue. So this is stitched on 32 count white evenly, this little sparkle by Fabric Flair. The pattern is by Joan Elliott. And I started it in January, hoping to finish it this year. I mean, there's not a whole lot left, just this block and the border, but then I have to do a little bit more up here on the Lady Dancing and a lot more gold metallic and backstitching, more backstitching here and here and the bottom, of course. And then there's French knots and there's some beads as well. So hopefully I can wrap it up by December. Maybe not till December 31st, but I will try. It'll probably be my focus piece in December if I'm not finished by then. So let's see. After that was the International Day of the Stitchy Olympics, and for that I decided to start a new project. I started Donner by Nora Corbett on 32 count Opal Belfast from Picture This Plus in the pewter colorway. Here he is. And I worked on this 2 days, so the International Day and also the Silver Day, because this fabric is pretty much silver, as you can see. And I had a lot of fun stitching on him. These patterns stitched up really quick, and I'm definitely planning on finishing him this year. So I'll probably take him out in November or something like that and give him a week and see if I can finish him up. So he was a lot of fun. And then after that was the Yellow Day in the Stitchy Olympics. And for that, I worked on Celtic Autumn. I don't exactly have a whole lot of yellow pieces among my whips, so I worked on this yellow bodice here, and that wasn't a whole lot of stitching, so I did more. So in addition to that day, I also worked on it for the white day, this B5200. I did from here basically down to there. Many, many rows. There's only about, I think, 13 rows left to go to get to the bottom. And then after the Stitchy Olympics, I brought it out and gave it a few more days. So this got 6 days of effort. I'll insert a picture of what it looked like before, and I loved working on it. So I did all this business in the dress, the swirls and the gold at the bottom and her shoe, and then this border pattern here. This is stitched on 28 count vintage Country Mocha Cashel by Zweigart. And it's a color conversion by Little Cat in the oranges and greens, Celtic Autumn by Lavender and Lace. So this one, I'm hoping to finish the bottom half this year, so I need to do the rest of the dress and then start the border pattern on this side up to the midpoint. So I'll take this out again, I don't know, October or November probably. and see what I can do. And then I'll try to finish it next year by like March or so. And then after that, it was the water day for the Stitchy Olympics. I worked on the summer bell pull. I stitched that water in the M block right here, this crashing surf. And I did a little bit more of this block. And then I worked on this piece again for the black day. I did the black in this block, which was like the ants and this bird and ladybug and just little pieces of black all around. And then I worked on it for the wheel day, moving down to the E block, the wheels on these camper vans. And then I worked on it 3 more days besides, so we're talking almost 7 days in all. So I would have to like stand way back to give you the full effect, but I guess I can do that. Summer, S-U-M-M-E. And then I made a little tiny start on the R. So that's as far as I've gotten on the R block. Not very far. I don't know if I mentioned this. So I started it during Stitch Mania, and my original goal for this year was to finish 50% of it. But then, as I progressed on the piece, I was thinking, well, maybe I can finish it this year, and maybe I can finish it by the autumn equinox, which is September 22nd. But then I spent like 3 days trying to finish this E block, and you know what? It's still not done. There's like maybe 4 or 5 colors left in here. This block was so busy. It totally burnt me out, you know? And I'm thinking, so I finished it by September 22nd, and then what? It says summer. I'm not going to hang it up, you know? So I think I'm just going to like let this piece remain a whip for a while, put it away, and take it out when I feel inspired to finish it, maybe like in spring of next year or something. So whatever. I mean, the only benefit of finishing it now would be crossing it off my, list of projects. So whatever, I can deal with another project. Another whip. Honestly, like, I wouldn't mind having like a gazillion whips if they were all like 85% done, like this one is, like it's having like tons of projects that don't have very much progress on them that like makes me kind of antsy because I feel like they're never going to get done. This one, I know I could finish it off with just like, less than a week probably of effort, so it's not so bad. And this is by Stony Creek from their Winter 2016 magazine. I'm stitching it on 18 count and cloth by MCG Textiles, an Afghan that I bought at Hobby Lobby and cut it up into bell pulls. So, when I bought this chart, I was like, oh, it's a bell pull. It's not very wide. It won't be that much effort. But man, I was so wrong. I mean, the stitch count on this thing is considerable, and it's very fiddly with tons of like little color changes. I mean, this block, the E block, probably used like 40 different colors, maybe. I don't know, something crazy. And that's kind of like indicative of Stony Creek. I did a birth announcement by them. I'll have to show you sometime, but their stuff, it looks beautiful in the end, but it's not necessarily the quickest to stitch. So after that was the specialty stitch day in the Stitchy Olympics. And for that, I pulled out my Earth Goddess. I did this back stitching here and some Krennic 015, which I had a teeny bit left over on a spool from another project. And then I also just worked more on it. So I worked on this again for the green day, doing all this like green grass and stuff. And then I worked on it again for the triathlon day, and then after the Stitchy Olympics, I gave it some more effort, so we're talking over 8 days total. And as you can see, I have stitched kind of like the bulk of the pattern, so what's left, well, here's the picture. So what's left would be her, you know, her upper body, her head, and her hair. And there's like a couple birds, and a couple more butterflies in there, and then tons and tons of back stitching. This little vine thing has to go all the way around, and I'm pretty sure stitching like this little bit took like an hour, so many hours ahead of back stitching, and of course there's back stitching all over the piece. So I have ordered what I need to finish the project, the Krennic and whatnot. So, and it shipped today. I was kind of like getting worried about it. I ordered from 123 Stitch earlier this week, and it was supposed to ship like the next day. So the next day I checked, and they pushed the ship date back by 1 day. So I checked that day, and they pushed it back again to the next day. So, but finally it has shipped, and hopefully I'll get it like next week or something. I'm not intending, I do want to work on her more this month, but probably not till like the latter half of it. So I did this, did more of the green grass over here, and I filled in this lighter color on her skirt, and I filled in the gold and the white in the ground, and I stitched this part of her skirt, the apron business, and this part down here. And then I did these mushrooms over there, and that snail, butterfly, 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 butterfly. So lots of butterflies. And I did this like circle around her, and then I did a bit more of her belt, and then I did her bodice. So my plan is to try to backstitch everything I can, and then I'll move back to the cross stitching and stitch her head and everything, and her arms and her hair and the little bluebirds and whatnot. Really do love how this is coming out. I'm stitching it on 32 count Balfus in the Highland colorway by Picture This Plus. It is like a pale green with a brown undertone. My camera doesn't do great with green, so it looks like kind of, I guess it's not too bad here. It's a little more saturated in person though, I think. And the pattern is by Joan Elliott. So I did air earlier this year, and I'm planning to do fire and water next year. So I want to get this wrapped up by the end of December, and I'll make fire one of my January starts. Love her. I mean, the colors as you're stitching with them aren't very exciting. It's a lot of like browns and grays for the most part, but I love how they all look together, you know. It's really pretty and very earthy. So it'll be fun. I think even the back stitching will be pretty fun, just to like make it come to life and everything. So after that, I worked on, it was the triathlon day. So I worked a little bit on my Mill Hill, as well as Earth Goddess. I worked on my Mill Hill Angel ornament. I did some of the, still got a needle hanging in there. I did some of the back stitching on here that day. There's like back stitching around her feet and under her lute and around her face and so forth. And then I also worked on it again for the gold day. So on the gold day, I broke out this gold metallic, and I put in the strings on the lute and the little bits on her halo, the little gold bits. I don't know if you can see that. And then I also started beading with the gold beads. So these beads here in her dress, and then on her sleeve hems, and on the lute, and then a little bit around the neckline as well. But I didn't quite finish the gold beads. So that's what this thread dangling is about. That was my bead attachment thread. I've got to put more up there on the other side of her neck, and then more in her halo. And then there's a billion other beads that have to go on here. I think there's like another 4 or 5 colors worth of beads. So I do want to finish it this year though, and I think I'll do that in November. I do really love her. I stitched her sister Gabriella last year. These are Mill Hill kits. And Gabriella turned out really pretty, and I think Angelina is too. I do have one more to stitch, Serafina, and I'll do that next year, I guess. So after that, okay, so we're still on the triathlon day, and I worked on The Castle by Teresa Wensler. Not very much, just for like an hour or so. I did some backstitching of the trees down here. That one, that one, that one, and then half of this one. That was maybe like 2 threads or whatever. So where I am on this piece, I want to do some backstitching before I do any more cross stitching. So my goal for the year, well, I stitched this year, I did, gosh, I don't even remember. I know I did all the castle. I may have done some of the dragon as well, like up here. I'm not sure though. And I definitely did this part up here, a little bits of the dragon up there. But now that all that is stitched, my goal is to backstitch. So I'm going to try to backstitch the bottom half. And this month, I'm going to try to backstitch like the Rocky Cliff area, I think. Or at least like half the Rocky Cliff area. So this is stitched on 28, or I think it's 28 count. Might be 32, I'm not sure. Linen by Silkweaver in the Castle View colorway. Really happy with my fabric choice for that one. Very atmospheric, I think. And I can't backstitch the dragon yet because you need metallic cord to do it, so I'll have to buy some of that. And I do want to finish this next year, so it's coming along. And then it was the red day, so I took advantage of that to work on my Love with a capital L piece. This is by Papillon Creations. Stitched on 25 count Antique Smoky White Lugana by Witchell. So the main color is red. And I worked on it again for the Copper Day, which this color here, for example, and like the first lead, like that P, for example, that's copper. This is done in Gloriana Silk 1/1. And the other color, the more gold color, is Pumpkin by Gloriana. So what I did on that first day is I stitched page 12, or I finished page 12, which is over here. Like the bottom of this piece, and Perseveres, and some of this band pattern, and then Ever Ails, and of course the side border. And then when I came back to it the second day, I decided to set up my personalization section. So I started doing this rose. This is like my addition to the pattern. Like the original pattern ends right here, and there's a bottom border. So, but I'm adding another section. So I started with this rose border pattern. And then I placed the S, the C, the U, and the N. So the S is for Stephanie. That's my name. C, Christopher. U, United. N, November. So it's going to be Stephanie full name and Christopher full name, united in marriage, and then the date, and then the bottom border. So my goal is to finish this piece by November 19th. And I don't know. We'll see how far I get this month. I'm going to work on it like the third weekend in September or whatever. But I might need to devote more time to it between now and then to accomplish finishing it by November. We'll see. So next time what I'll do is I'll work on the border. I'm ready to like turn it and start working on the bottom border. So I'll try to work it like, a third or halfway across, and then I'll work on the letters. And then there's like some empty space in this block. Like here. And here, and then it's going to be the same on the other side because the text is centered. I think what I'm going to need to do is find some cute small motifs to kind of like fill that up so the block doesn't look so empty. So if you have any suggestions, I'm thinking like hearts and maybe like lilies or something. I don't know. If you have any like books you can recommend that have like small motifs, feel free to like tell me in the comment section. And it would have to be something that doesn't involve a whole lot of colors because I'm just using 3 colors on this piece. So something, that uses 1 or 2 colors would be optimal. But I love it. And I do look forward to working on it again. And of course I have to do this big capital L up here. I did buy something for it, which I showed in my vlog. It's a Valdani variegated cotton thread called Terracotta. We'll see if that works out. If it doesn't, I'm just going to use the red, the crimson. So that's it for love. And then it was the equestrian event day. I worked on my maiden and unicorn piece, which the unicorn being equestrian, horse, whatever. So I stitched on the unicorn basically. It was like to here maybe, and I stitched this bit and that bit. 3 different colors. Not great progress, but not bad for a few hours, I guess. And I've got a long way to go in this piece, obviously. I do want to finish the bottom half of it this year, so that I need to do the rest of the unicorn and then this border up to the halfway mark. And then hopefully I can finish it next year. So I'm going to spend a week on it this month and hopefully knock out most, if not all, the unicorn and maybe some of this border too. The unicorn isn't bad. There aren't any fractional stitches, and it's just like 3 or 4 different colors, so not a big deal. Hopefully I can do it pretty quick. And so this is by the Vermilion Stitchery, and I'm stitching it on 36 count antique white Edinburgh, a decision that I kind of like regret. But I do like how it's coming out so small and delicate. I'm stitching it over 2. But there's a lot of fractionals in the border, and it's tough on this fabric. And I have a companion design for it, St. George and the Dragon, so after I finish this, I'm probably going to start that one. And I have more of this fabric I can use for it, but I don't know. Do they make even weave in 36 count? Because that would be easier than this stuff. Like Jobelin or Lugana. I've never seen it higher than like 32. Oh, I might just have to suffer through it and use the Edinburgh that I have. I mean, they have to come out the same size. It would just look funny if I stitched one on 36 and the other one on 32 or something, so. And then it was the fire day, like the Olympic torch. And for that, I worked on my Spirit of Christmas project by Lavender and Lace, stitching this on Dwarf Belfast by Picture This Plus. Really pretty, like grayish blue. And I did the candle flames. So there and there and there and there. It was just 2 different colors and some fractionals. But I do really like how they came out. Very realistic looking fire in my opinion. So this guy is coming along. I don't know if I'm going to work on him again this year. Maybe in December, depending on whether I've accomplished my other goals for 2016 or not. So, and then, was that the last day? I guess that's it for the Stitchy Olympics. So the other thing I did on that day is I finished my FO. I'm sorry. I finished my Siren Shipwreck. And here's my FO. This is a Mirabilia pattern. Here she is. Stitched her on 32 count Belfast in the sea glass colorway, hand dyed by Steph. Love this fabric, really pretty sea green. I did a conversion on her for her hair, made her a redhead, and I had to change I had to switch out the water lily that I used in her hair. I had to switch out the beads and some of the treasures as well because what was charted just didn't look right with the red hair. So I have all the conversion details on my blog, and I will provide a link to that in the description box for this video. And I worked on this a bit before the Stitchy Olympics, I think for 2 days, and then I finished it off on the last night, just like less than an hour, to attach a few treasures and do my signature. So here's a close-up of the beads in the tail. She's super blingy. Love her. Love that red hair. Love these teardrop beads. Briolettes, maybe they're called? I don't know. And I love how the beads in her hair turned out. I converted these to citron. They were supposed to be like the light purple or whatever, like the periwinkle color. That didn't look good, so. And then these treasures here, the yellow ones or light topaz or whatever, I switched those out from light purple because, like I said, the light purple didn't look right against the red. So I love her. I think she might be my favorite mermaid so far. And I just can't leave the genre alone because I'm planning to start Aphrodite this month. This took, well, I started it in January, on the 2nd of January, but it took 22 days, stitching days. And it's pretty decent size, 8 by 16. And any other details I want to mention? Keep my notes here. Yeah, that's about it. I don't have a frame for her yet, but I'll probably try to frame her like next year or something. My mermaid, love her. It did involve some trial and error and some frogging though, all my mods and substitutions. I am looking forward to stitching Aphrodite because there's nothing about that pattern I want to change, so it'll be a more relaxing stitch in a way. And then now I think I will insert my tag that I did, the Stitchy Spot tag, and my Q&A. Hey Flosstube, Stephanie here, Ms. Oh So Crafty. I am doing the Stitchy Spot tag from Carrie Sayers. Thank you, Carrie, for these questions. So the first question is, show your Stitchy Spot, and you're looking at it. That armchair there is my Stitchy chair. The ottoman is where I put my feet up. And on top of the ottoman is my scroll frame with the blanket draped over it. So let's get a bit closer. So here on this arm of the chair is my thread organizer. It has multiple pockets and I keep stuff organized in there. And then over here are some pages of the pattern that I'm working on. I'll keep some on that arm and prop others on the scroll frame as I'm working. This table here, glass for water, and lots of stitchy stuff in there. Most of it doesn't really belong there. It should be in the room next door, which is my craft room, but I guess I'm lazy because it's all just in here. At least it's convenient, right? So I'll sit down. This is a nice comfy chair. Great for falling asleep in. So the blanket, not only to protect from dust, but also to keep me warm. I'm like perpetually cold, so even in the summertime I'll put it on my legs. So I'll sit down, put my feet up, grab the frame, prop it on my lap, get comfy. And the second question is, what is your view from your Stitchy Spot? So this is primarily my view. You can see that with the two lamps on either side, there's plenty of light on this piece, no funky shadows. That's good because most of my stitching time is at night. So my view is primarily of that TV over there, which is not on at the moment, and that whole like bookcase system. So I do have some stitchy stuff in the bookcases. I'm pointing at, and there in the bottom right, those binders. Those are that's my DMC floss collection, the full set. And I also have some like pattern books and stuff like that in there, but most of it's in the room next door, my craft room. And over here on the table I keep this binder, which is like, has copies of my working patterns organized in alphabetical order. Yeah. So, and also from my Stitchy Spot I can see that little chair over there? That's Oliver's chair where he sits when he's watching cartoons, although I don't get a ton of stitchy time while he's awake, you know, with him being 2 years old and everything. Sorry for the mess. That's like just all his stuff, you know. He brings a bunch of toys in here, and you can see a few scroll frames, extra scroll frames on the floor there underneath the coffee table. Those theoretically are supposed to be in my craft room as well, but you know, they're convenient there. And then there's the fireplace over there, which is nice in the winter time. And another window over there, which you can open up for more light during the day. Oh yeah, so there is a fair amount of light in here during the daytime. You can kind of see all those windows on that wall over there. Open up those shutters and there's a ton of natural light on that sofa. So it's great if I'm stitching on like a dark fabric or whatever. I can sit over there under the window and have plenty of light to see it. So one of my pieces is over there. That's Woodland Enchantress. There's another one over here. That's Mother Earth. I'll have to show those to you properly sometime. And in addition to like the TV and everything, we've got it's hooked up to a home theater, so I can listen to music here, watch TV, watch Flosstube. Yeah, we don't have cable, but we do have Netflix and an Apple TV and Amazon Prime, so I can watch YouTube on there, and it's cool. I don't really miss cable that much. The only time I really missed it was during the Olympics, but you know, that's only once every couple years. Not a big deal. The third question is, describe your perfect Stitchy day. So for me, that would be a day where it's dark and rainy or snowy or whatever. A day where you just want to stay inside. A day where I have no plans, nothing to do, where the house is clean, no chores awaiting. When husband is home to provide childcare, so I can just sit in my chair and stitch, stitch, stitch. It used to be, like, before I had my son, I would sometimes spend, like, the entire day stitching. On, like, the International Hermit and Stitch weekend, man, that was awesome. I would just, like, put in a good, like, 8 to 10 hours in a day on my piece, and that was awesome. Hard to do that with a little one, though, so, but maybe when he's older. Alright, that's it for my Stitchy spot, and we'll get... Hey Flosstube, do you want to stitch with me? I had some Q&A for my last couple videos, the Stitchy Olympic vlogs, and normally I answer Q&A and the questions in the comment section, but these questions were more sort of a show and tell type thing, so I thought it might be good to answer them on my next video. And I'm stitching this really boring tablecloth pattern on my summer bell pull, so hopefully I can stitch and talk at the same time. So the first question was from Laura Love. She wanted to know, do you use your master set for all your whips even when you have projects that use multiple skeins of one color? Yeah, so I have a master set of DMC, keep it on stitch bows and 2 binders, and I have 1 skein of each color in those binders. I also have some excess, which I keep organized in baggies, sorted by number, like all the 100s are together, all the 200s are together, so forth. So, and I have a index where I note how many skeins of each color that I have. So what I do when I'm starting a new project is I'll go to my index and make sure that I have everything I need in sufficient quantities. And I just pull my threads from my master set. I put them in this index, in this organizer here. So everything I pull, I put in this back pocket here, and then I take the stuff that I want to use, like today or whatever, put it in here. The stuff I want to use, I'm using right, you know, currently this hour or whatever, in here, and then I put the stuff that I'm done with over here. I like the master set just because it's, like, you know, streamlined, and I don't fancy the idea of having a floss box for each project. I have so many projects, it would just take up a lot of space. There would be a lot of duplicates. So the only downside of the master set is that it, well, you have to pull your thread and put it back and pull it again, but if you're only rotating like once a week or whatever, it's not a big deal. And she said, have you ever had an issue with a color not matching if you have to start a new skein? So yeah, going back to my index, what I do is I note if I have a skein or not. It wouldn't be reflected if I only half a skein. So it is quite frequent that I do run out of a color when I'm working on a project. In that case, I just go to the craft store and buy more. I've never had a problem with dye consistency that I can recall. So I guess DMC is pretty good in that regard, but your mileage may vary on that issue. I know I've heard other floss tubers talking about they've had issues with dye consistency. If I ever did, what I'd probably do is just like tweet it together, the old and the new, for a transition period. But like I said, I run out all the time, buy more, never had a problem, so it's not something I really worry about. And then she wanted to know what sort of scroll frames that I use. So I use scroll frames by American Dream Products, the Easy Stitch, which means there's Velcro attached. And I use them with Kay's Creation lap stands. They are not meant to go together. What I had to do is drill a hole through the sidebar here and here in order to mount it on the Kay's stand, which, you know, that worked. So the scroll frames are nice. The tension is, you know, pretty good. It's certainly not like drum tight, especially not on this because I've got so much fabric on this top scroll here. This is quite a long piece of fabric and it's like wrapped around and around many times. So you can't necessarily get it super tight, but probably tight enough for me anyway. And I have so many of these frames. I've got at least 2 pairs of the sidebars. This is the largest one. And then I've got just dozens of the actual scroll rods, everything from like 30 inches down to 6 inches. Well, maybe not dozens, probably between like 6 and 8 sets, maybe 10 sets, I don't know. Everything between like 30 inches and 6 inches. So I'm pretty well invested in this system, and I love the stands. You see like the little pocket type thing here, and it's adjustable with these screws. You can easily adjust the height, the angle. You can flip it over real easy. I just really like these stands for the way I stitch, which is sitting in a armchair, leaning back a little, and with my feet up on an ottoman. It just works really well, and it doesn't take up a lot of space either. These stands. Starting over. It doesn't take up a lot of space either. These stands fold more or less flat for storage. So I have seen like the quantum frame on Flosstube, and it is very tempting. But I just have so much of this, my current system, and it works, so I don't really feel like I want to invest in a new system. So I'll stick with this for a while. I've never tried Q-snaps. I learned on a hoop. Don't really like using a hoop. Don't like how it crushes your stitches. I don't like how you have to reposition it all the time, and I don't like how it can leave like marks on your fabric. The Q-snap, I don't know, because like I've never tried it. I feel like some of the drawbacks with the hoop would also apply to the Q-snap though, perhaps. I might have to try it someday, because if I ever want to do like a really huge size paid, you can't get a super wide piece of fabric on a lap frame. It just doesn't work. Your lap's not that wide, you know? So I'm gonna have to, or a lap stand rather. Yeah, it just doesn't work. It's not wide enough, so I don't know. I'll have to figure out something else for that. So that's it for Laura's questions. Hope I answered those to your satisfaction, Laura. And then, so Chris Arlington wanted to know, what is your favorite method? Scroll rods, Q-snaps, etc. So I kind of get into that. I'd like this. The scroll rod is my favorite because I like how the fabric is all rolled up. It keeps it neat and clean, and it doesn't get wrinkly. And I stitch in the well, so when my top hand is resting on the bar right here, that's the back of the fabric. And when my back hand may touch the back of the fabric when I'm repositioning the needle, but that again is the back of the fabric. I don't like to wash my projects. I wash my hands before I sit down and stitch on them, and I don't eat or drink anything besides water while I'm stitching. As for washing, I did have to do it once when I was I worked on this project on Ada, Mother Earth, a Dimensions Gold kit, Ada on a hoop, and I took it everywhere with me, on the metro, to school, and by the end, her dress, which was supposed to be white, was more like a dingy gray color, so it definitely needed to be washed, and I did a gentle hand wash and let it air dry on a towel. When it dried, it was no longer a rectangle, it had become a parallelogram. The thing had warped. I don't know why. The piece was almost all full cross. It didn't have a whole lot of half cross. So, I don't know, but I mean, it was bad. It was severely warped. And I was able to fix it in the framing, but I had to tug it really hard and basically like coerce it back into shape. I am in no hurry to repeat that experience, so I just try to keep stuff clean as I'm working on it. Okay, so Amy Pinkelman. She wanted to know if I could explain my process for leaving and tying off threads. So, yeah, here's the deal. I'm kind of like stingy with threads. So, you can see a lot of stuff dangling here. And what this is, they're all different colors, and I basically just like, I stitched a few stitches with one color and then parked it in the bottom left corner of the last stitch, and then it's on the piece. It is accessible for when I need it again. I will park basically whenever I have like a decent amount of thread left over, you know, and especially if I need to use it again somewhere on the piece or, you know, nearby or whatever, but I'm not quite ready to stitch that part yet. It looks messy, I grant you that, but you know, it's a temporary thing and I don't mind. I just sort of like move the threads aside from the area where I'm actively stitching. And I do try to park like on the periphery, so it's not like right in the middle of the area. So the next part of her question was, when do you leave them? I guess I kind of explained that. And then she wanted to know, how far do you travel behind your work with your threads? So yeah, so after I park those threads, if I need it again, I will just rethread my needle with it, and depending on where I need to stitch with it, I will either carry the thread or I will secure it and restart in the new area. As for carrying threads, I am kind of picky about it. That's probably like the one area of cross stitch that I'm kind of nitpicky about. I do not want show through of threads on empty fabric or whatever, and it depends just a lot on what you're stitching, like how sheer the fabric is and how much empty, you know, negative space you have. But I have been known to like go to lengths. Like here's my Celtic spring autumn piece, and you can see this border pattern here. So this fabric, the 28 cashel in this vintage country mocha, is pretty sheer. I don't know if you can see my fingers through there. And I didn't want to like see this dark green color here. I didn't want to just like carry that down the fabric to the next motif because I felt like it would show through. So what I did is I stitched this side first, this dark red border. And you can see there's a lot carried down, but it's all on this side, you know, with the red stitches. So what I would do is I would just take my dark green thread and like run it through one of those stitches and then carry it up to where I next need it and run it through another stitch and then just like pop it over and start stitching again. So the carryover is basically under an already stitched area and it's not showing through on the front of the piece. And I do that, you know, whenever I need to, basically. I've certainly done it on this piece because this fabric is white and it is very see-through, so, and there is a lot of negative space. But say that's not the situation. Say your fabric is, you know, relatively solid, you don't have to worry about see-through, or say it's solidly stitched or something like that. So In that case, I will carry. Like, here's my Earth Goddess piece. You see these little, like, dark green highlights in her skirt? Heck yeah, I carried that, but you know, it doesn't matter because this area is solidly stitched, and you can't see that carryover on the front of the piece. So, she wanted to know any other tips. Well, I like to start in the center and work in quadrants. So like for Earth Goddess, I started right about there at her like waist. That was the center of the chart, and then I worked on this quadrant first, the bottom right one. So I like to start with the color that is most prevalent and or easiest to see on the chart, like the symbol's easiest to see. So in that case, this was this darker brown color. So I stitched all this darker brown in the skirt, and then I stitched the lighter brown, and then I started working on the grass and the mushrooms. Finally I went back, I filled in the lighter orange. And when I'm working on, when I start a new color or whatever, I try to make it adjoining my old color, or at least within a few stitches, so that kind of minimizes counting errors. If I do need to count across more than like 4 or 5 stitches of empty fabric, what I'll do is like a little half ad hoc gridding. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like, let's imagine that I wanted to start stitching with this thread again somewhere else. Say like 5 stitches across or whatever, across empty fabric. So I'm not good at stitching in hand. I'm very like wedded to my scroll frames. So I'll do like a little straight stitch every other stitch. So there's one. And I skipped one. So that's 2, that's 4. That's 6. Okay, I've counted across 6 stitches of empty fabric. No worries about miscounting or whatever. And that's easy to see, it's easy to pull out. But I've never done a full gridding. I would just rather be stitching than gridding, you know. So the last question was from Shauna77 Stitches. She wanted to know if I ever get half a stitch off on my linen, because she didn't see any gridding or counting pins. So yeah, the answer to that question is sure, yeah, I make mistakes, I'm human. And yeah, I mean, when you don't grid, that's sort of the risk you take, right? And like in here, for example, so I started working on the left quadrant of the pattern. I started with the dress, so I did this bit, and then I did the darker gray up here in the apron area, filled in some of that other gray, and did this little bit, and then I started with this green, which is kind of the main color of the grass. And as you can see, these are some really long rows of stitches, 25, 35, even more stitches, whatever. And there is an error in the bottom here. I'm 1 stitch off somewhere, I don't know exactly where. I noticed it when I was about 6 rows up, and I corrected, so it's not a big deal. It's at the edge of the piece, and I'm just going to have to adjust when I go and do the fill with the gold and the lighter green and the white later. So as far as like, you know, being 1 thread off, yeah, sure, it happens. Depending on like where it is. If it's at the edge of the piece, I'll just leave it. If it's in the middle and going to affect everything else, then I will definitely frog. But I try to like stitch in close areas, and when I'm starting a new area, I try to reference it against something previously stitched, so if I make an error, I can tell sooner rather than later. I have very rarely ever been in a situation where I have to frog more than like, you know, 20-30 stitches. Probably the worst frogging I had to do recently was on this piece. Because when I started it, I started from the middle, and it wasn't the E block, it was the first block, the S block, but Yeah, I miscounted and the whole thing was just off. So I had to frog most of the letter or whatever. But that was a bummer. It took like a couple hours to thread. Usually my frogging can be accomplished in like 15 minutes or less. So that's it for the questions. Hope you enjoyed stitching with me, and I'll see you back on the main video. Hey Flosstube! So this is my husband, Christopher. You can also call him Mr. Oh So Crafty. He has graciously agreed to appear and to be interviewed on some stitching terms, so this should be fun. Here we go. The first question is, what is Flosstube?
It's a YouTube channel.
Sort of. Close enough. The second question is, what is floss?
It's the thread that you use in stitching.
Very good. The third question is, what is a whip?
A work in progress.
You got it. How about an FO?
Finished object.
What about an FFO?
A final finished object.
Close. Or it could be fully finished object.
I feel like these are too easy.
It'll get harder.
You like threw me a bone like to start out.
What's a sow?
I think Oliver knows, but I don't.
Oliver's eating some cereal back there. So yeah. So a sal is a stitch along. S-A-L.
Oh, I wouldn't
sal.
know that.
How about an ort?
An ort?
Yeah, what's an ort?
Now you're setting me up to fail. An ort?
Yeah, what's an ort?
I don't know.
Well, take a guess.
I could probably guess with other ones, but not ort. Object, something or another.
Old raggedy thread.
Yeah, you're setting me up to fail.
Okay, how about, what is mirabilia?
That's a designer of stitch patterns.
That's good. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how about, what's frogging?
That's when you mess up and you have to like backtrack because you've miscounted your stitches.
Yeah, that gets it, but technically it's actually unpicking your stitches.
Well, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
I get credit for that one.
Okay, fine. Whatever. Okay, what is Mill Hill?
Maybe that a store or something? I don't know. I'm guessing.
Manufacturer of beads and embellishments.
So I was right.
What is what is Krennic?
Krennic?
Yeah.
Is that Gaelic for something? I don't know.
It's a metallic thread manufacturer.
That is unfair.
How is that unfair? I use it all the time. If you knew how many spools of Krennic I have in my stash. Or maybe it's better you don't know.
You know, I converted her to be a true geek. You want to show your... what are the sign that Vulcans make?
You mean this one?
Yeah, there you go. She didn't know that. She also didn't know who Darth Vader was.
I knew who Darth Vader was.
No, she did. She was like, who is that?
Whatever. This one grew up on, like, geeky movies all the time, you know?
Goonies. You know, those type of films.
All right, moving on. What is Ada?
Ada. I think that's a type of fabric.
Yeah, very good.
Mm-hmm.
What's HPI?
I don't know.
Well, take a guess.
I would assume it's a metering of something.
Pretty good. Holes per inch.
I was thinking high performance impact, but
that sounds better. What is Belfast?
that is a city in Ireland.
True. But in the context of
I
stitching.
get credit for that one. In the context of stitching?
Yeah.
I would assume like a gauge of fabric.
Kind of. It's a type of fabric. 32 count linen.
A gauge
Manufactured
of fabric.
by
I get credit
Swigert.
for that one too.
Okay, what is Jobelin?
I don't know.
Yes.
A designer?
No, it's a type of fabric. You believe. All right, this is where it should get interesting. What is my favorite type of fabric?
It's a Ada.
No way. Do you not know me at all?
Do you like 32 count fabric?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as 32 count Ada.
You like linen?
Yes.
Yeah.
32 count linen, Belfast.
Mm-hmm.
So you did know the answer.
Yeah, I think so.
What's my favorite designer?
Mirabilia.
Yeah, that's pretty good. It's either Mira or Joan Elliott. I never know. So yeah, he gets like at least half credit for that one. And what's my favorite stitching genre?
It would have to be fantasy.
You got it.
Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff is hung up around our house, so I mean, he would have to be kind of blind if he didn't know that.
You know, I'm counting fairies all the time as I'm walking around the house with my son, and there are like a billion mermaids and bathrooms and stuff. And, yeah, there's like goddesses of the seasons around the house.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's fantasy.
But you like it.
Oh, I do. Yeah.
Good
I
thing.
mean, we live in Camelot, so it's apropos.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, thank you for appearing on my channel.
Sure.
You did great.
Thank you.
I think out of all the questions, you only missed a few.
Well,
so.
we didn't talk about the rules. Like, do I pass?
You pass.
Okay.
You get an A.
All right, good. I want the Flosstube world to know that I've just earned husband currency.
We used to have this system. It was like a point system. We went to the movies all the time before our son was born, and
We had to stop because we went to too many chick flicks, and so.
no, we had to stop because I got too far ahead. The system was like,
It's true, actually. Yeah.
we would take turns picking movies, and if the movie was good, then whoever picked the movie would get a point. And I mean good, like objectively speaking. So.
I have nothing to say about that.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Take care of Flosstube.
Bye. Okay, so general wrap up. The Stitching Olympics are really fun. I had a great time doing it, and there is another challenge coming up, the U.S. Election Day. 2 weeks leading up to Election Day, so like the last week in October, first week in November. And I've decided to participate in that and do a vlog for it as well. That should be fun. The only thing about these rotation challenges is I get really sucked into it. I just want to stitch, stitch, stitch. So I kind of neglect housework while they're going on. So this time after the Stitchy Olympics, I had to spend so much time catching up on housework, and that wasn't much fun. And I felt like I was spending all this time cleaning my house and not stitching, and that kind of like bummed me out because I had like these focus pieces that I wanted to work on. Earth Goddess and the Summer Bell Pull and Celtic Autumn. So I think what I'm going to do in October is clean the house top to bottom before the event starts. And I do really enjoy the vlogging too. I don't feel like I could do it every day because I don't rotate on a daily basis, nor do I necessarily stitch that much every day. I tend to stitch more during the events, but I do really enjoy the vlogging, and I definitely missed it after I stopped this time. On that Monday, I was like, oh, I want to do my daily check-in, but I wasn't doing a vlog, and I didn't really have that much to share. So my plans for this month include working on, Earth Goddess, which I did the first couple days of September. The Soulful Stitching Sisters group on Facebook is having a Joan Elliott Stitch Along that started on September 1st. So that's my project for that. And I do want to work on her a bit more too, like when I get my metallics and stuff, like I mentioned earlier. And I'll work on the 12 Days of Christmas this weekend, tonight and tomorrow. And then on Monday, I think I'll pick up my Maiden and the Unicorn piece. The Stitch Mania group is having the World of Pure Imagination Stitch Along this month on Facebook, and that is totally right up my alley. You know me, love all the fantasy stuff, so I could probably put like any of my projects in there, but The ones I'm choosing to focus on include Maiden and the Unicorn and The Castle by Teresa Wensler. So that'll be some backstitching. Hopefully at least a few days of backstitching, as much as I can take. Hopefully a full week on the Maiden and the Unicorn. And then the third weekend in September, I'll work on my Love with a capital L project. And somewhere in there, I'm planning to make some new starts. So it'll be, I think I'm going to try to do 3 new starts. It'll be Aphrodite by Mirabilia on Zeus's Domain Under the Sea Fabrics, and Gigi, one of the Bewitching Pixies on Under the Sea Nyx 32 Lugana. And then finally, it's going to be the small pattern Love to Nurse from Hindsight, I think it is. Besides that, so the reason why I'm doing those 3 new starts is because I'm ready to wrap up the year of starts. So for me, I decided to do 16 new starts. I've done 13 so far, so 14, 15, 16. And the reason why I'm doing it now in September as opposed to spreading it out, through the end of the year is because I have joined the Year of Whoops Challenge with the Soulful Stitching Sisters, and that starts October 1st. So I don't know if you've heard about that. The group is by Melanie Watkins, and this whole thing was her idea. Great idea. She makes Flosstube videos too, so check her out. She did a video explaining what the challenge is about, but I'll see if I can just do it here in case you're interested. So it's a challenge. The idea is to focus on your whips. So you pick 10 to 15 whips. The older the better. Stuff that you have a shot of finishing within the next year. And you just focus on them for the following year. There are no specific rules about rotation or starts or whatever than that. I mean, the whole point is just to focus on your whips, and everybody will be paired with a partner, and you and your partner will exchange monthly postcards or similar, providing encouragement and stuff like that. So I feel like after the year starts, the Year of Whips is exactly what I need. So. And conveniently, 10 to 15 projects. So for me, it's going to be 15. I've got 10 current whips, and then I'm going to do 3 new starts. That makes 13. And then I'm going to bring 2 of my UFOs out of retirement for 15 total. So the 2 I'm going to bring out are both Dimensions Gold kits. The Fall Fairy and the Snowman and Friends stocking. So all of these whips are and one of the UFOs is barely started, the other is considerably far along, but most of these projects are, have a good chunk of them done. So in the challenge, if you finish at least half your projects, you'll be entered in a drawing for a prize. And my goal for next year is definitely to finish at least half the projects. It would be awesome to finish all of them. I don't know. I do want to get down to 8, I think. 8 whips. So that's going to be my goal for next year, to get down to 8. And that's not to say I'm not going to make starts. I'll do a couple starts for Crazy January. And as for the event, Stitchmania or whatever, I do want to participate. It might be with all whips though, or maybe just with 1 or 2 starts, whatever sort of fits into my stitching schedule at that time. I don't want to have I guess I do want to have 15 projects for Mania. So I might have to have more than 15 in my rotation, or more than 8 in my rotation temporarily, but they will be small projects. So I'll start some ornaments or something like that for Stitchmania, or a piece where I can make little starts within the piece and consider it a new start. So I might do this massive Mill Hill piece next year, which will be the Mill Hill Christmas Villages, 12 of them stitched together on one big piece of fabric. So 12 buildings, and each kit is 5 by 5 or whatever. So I mean, it's a pretty massive project, but I would consider each of those to be a separate start. I won't be doing the year starts next year. I won't be doing the Crazy 7. It's not me. I'm not a serial starter. I prefer to like finish something and then start something, or that kind of thing. I like to finish things. So I think the year of whips will be really great, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to getting to know my postcard partner, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. We're kicking off on the night of September 30th. There's going to be like a Google Hangout, so we can all like get to know each other a little bit. That should be fun. And also this month, I want to do some other stuff besides stitching, like framing. I'm finally going to film my long-promised framing tutorial. My goal is to finish or to frame 4 projects. And then I think I'm also going to start a felt applique project, like some Christmas decor type thing. So, okay, so I have a little bit Stitchy haul to share. I went to this store called Grim Hollow Stitchery in Red Lion, Pennsylvania, and I picked up a few goodies there. So this pattern, Celtic Winter by Lavender and Lace. This will be my next Celtic lady after Autumn is finished. We'll start her next year, probably, and I do plan to do a color conversion on her. I'm going to make it blue and silver instead of this white and gold. And then I also got this Just Cross Stitch Halloween mag. So here's the reason that I bought the magazine, Halloween Magic. I just love that pattern. I think she's so pretty, and I love all the details in it, the cauldron and the pumpkin and the border and everything. That is by Frony Ritter of Frony Ritter Designs. I like this a lot. Spooky Ride by Sharon Pope. I think that's so cute. The black cat pulling the wagon with the little ghost. Love that. And then I got a few other things there, some treasures in the threads. It was a nice little shop. Liked it a lot. The owner was very sweet. And then I was enabled by Stitching Joanne on Flosstube here, her finish of this kit. Twilight Silhouette. I bought this at Joanne with the 60% off coupon, paid $10 for it. Awesome, eh? Couldn't pass it up at that price. I never would have. I don't really like stitching things with a few colors, especially ones that are just like dark colors, but Joanne's project is just so fabulous. I feel like I need to stitch this, so I will give it a shot. Okay, so that's it for my stitching. If that's what you came for, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in a couple weeks. Thank you everyone who left a comment and all my subscribers. You guys are just so wonderful, and your comments brighten up my day and keep me motivated to keep stitching, and I love being part of this community. So I'm really glad I started making Flosstube videos, and I hope to continue doing it for a very long time to come. But if you're interested in my knitting, I do have something to share, and that is the sweater that I'm wearing. So, hey Flosstube, I was trying to edit my video last night, and I lost this footage of my sweater, so here it is the next morning, and I am redoing it. So, here we go. The sweater pattern, it's called Petal, and it's by Kim Hargreaves. It's published in her Misty book, and let's see, I knit it back in 2010. It took me about 1 month. I'll give you the side view and the back view. It's knit on, well, I used Bristol Yarn Gallery Linden Hill, which is 85% cotton, 15% silk. It's a fingering weight yarn, and I used about 900 yards of it. I knit the small size of the sweater, which for me was like an inch of negative ease. You need negative ease for something like this, otherwise your chest is just going to fall out of it, you know? And, but because of that, I did my increases a little bit closer paced, so I got to the full width of the bust sooner. It just gave me a little bit more room in the top of the sweater. And the gauge was 7.25 stitches per inch on 2.75 millimeter inch needles, which is like 2s, I think, 2.5 maybe. And then I used slightly smaller needles, 2.25 for the trim. So the trim would be like this eyelet business at the bottom or on the sleeve. And then the buttons, so I ordered them online. They're like these little crystal business. They're a little bit too big, but the pattern did not specify a button size, kind of my little quibble. The way it was put together was interesting. The shoulder section, so this neck piece is really cool. I mean, you don't see this a whole lot in knitting the way it's put together here, but it did require a lot of pinning, you know, to make everything like come out right. And, you know, sewing it together and everything. I did do short row shaping and 3 needle bind off for the shoulders, which is the way I like to do it. I mean, it's just like a clean inside edge, it's strong. And the short row shaping is because your shoulder is a natural curve, right? You don't have like shoulders going straight across, they curve down. And the 3 needle bind off basically just allows you to avoid seaming it. So you don't have to worry about any like bumpy seam or anything in there. You just do the 3 needle bind off, it's nice and strong. And the stitch pattern is kind of interesting. It's got like this little like texture business, but when I was knitting it, it made little holes in the fabric. So I'm such a compulsive. I had to just like go around with my tapestry needle and even out the fabric because I didn't want little holes in the fabric, you know. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, the button loops. So you're supposed to crochet the button loops, and I didn't like, especially how it's coming out down here, because as I mentioned, the sweater has negative ease, so the button band was gaping apart, and not a good look. So what I did was just seamed it together and then sewed the buttons on top for decoration. This sweater, I mean, it's cool. It has like a nice like vintage vibe to it, and like I mentioned, the neckline is pretty unique and everything, and it's nice for summer, nice and lightweight. But you know, tiny needles, tiny gauge. It is kind of a tedious thing to knit. And the yarn is really nice, really light and cool. But I mean, it's a sweater, of course. And I guess that's about it for my knitting. So, all right. So, thank you for watching, and thanks for stitching with me. And I will see you guys soon. Bye.